payment beforehand, like commercial advertisements.
Okay. All right, just doing a real test real fast. Still looks good. And you can hear us, Stephanie?
Yes, I can still hear you. Everything's still.
Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to our Education Outreach Committee meeting on May 18th, and it is now 1:33 p.m. and I call the meeting to order. So Abigail, would you please do some housekeeping at this point?
Of course. Thank you, Chair Commissioner Dr. Al-Hassan. Good afternoon. The Education and Outreach Committee meeting will be held on Zoom via teleconference and held at the California Commission on Disability Access headquarters, located at 400 R Street, Suite 312 in Sacramento, California, 95811. Per Assembly Bill 361, extending the Bagley-King flexibility through March 31st, 2022, teleconferencing restrictions were waived during the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, committee members were not required to list their remote locations. However, in accordance with the expiration of Assembly Bill 361's teleconferencing provisions, members of the public may participate either by Zoom or teleconferencing from any location. Please refer to page 4 of the agenda for our committee members' listed locations. The first agenda was distributed on Friday, May 6, 2022, and the second amended and the final agenda was distributed on Friday, May 13, 2022. The most recent agenda can be found on the CCDA website. The commissioners listed CCDA Education Outreach Committee meeting locations are as follows. Commissioner Dr. Sue Al-Hassan, Chair of the California Commission on Disability Access Education Outreach Committee, location at 9433 Ives Street, Bellflower, California, 90706. Commissioner Ashley Leon Vasquez, committee member of the California Commission on Disability Access Education and Outreach Committee, located at 15950 Paramount Boulevard in Paramount, California, 90723. This meeting is being captioned and recorded. To assist in this effort, please state your first and last name each time you speak and speak loud and clear. The live captioning link has been included in the text for your use. Public participants can use the raise hand function to alert the committee of when they would like to speak. And we will also give an opportunity for public members who have called into the meeting at which that time they can unmute themselves. If you're attending this meeting via teleconference, please press *6 on your keypad to unmute yourself or to mute yourself. If you would like to alert CCDA, press *9 telephonically to raise your hand and staff will call on you. Please remember to mute yourself if you're not speaking in order to reduce noise and technical issues. If you're having any technical issues throughout the meeting and need assistance, please use the chat function to alert CCDA staff or email us at ccda@dgs.ca.gov. And then back to that, I'll give it back to
you. Thank you so much, Abigail. So now we'll go to agenda item 1, which is roll call. Abigail, will you please do the roll call at this time?
Of course. All right, so we're going to start with Chair Commissioner Dr. Sue Al-Hassan.
Present.
Commissioner Ashley Leon Vasquez.
Present.
There she is.
Thank you. Commissioner Michael Paravania. All right. Committee member Zinat Hassan.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Arnie Lerner.
Here.
Thank you. And then committee member Stephen Simon. All right. And with that, we do have quorum.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Oh, and then I'm going to refer to Stephanie for her to identify other commissioners within the meeting as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair Doug L. Hessen and members of the E&O Committee. Present today, I am seeing Harleen Panu from Assembly Member Mayan Shine's office. If you would like to make yourself known.
Hi everyone, Harleen Panu from Assemblymember Mainshine's office.
Welcome.
And then we've also been informed by Commissioner Paravanya that he will be unable to attend today.
Okay.
And at this time, are there any other, I believe then I pass it back to you,
That's
Abby.
right. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. All right, then with that, I will give it back to you, Chair Commissioner El Hessen.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the public in the meeting who wish to identify themselves? You may do so now. Any public members? Okay. Hearing none.
I do not see any
Sorry.
indication in the chat.
Okay, all right. Hearing none, I'll proceed to agenda item number 2, approval of the February 23rd, 2022 meeting minutes. Is everyone had a chance to look at the Educational Outreach Committee meeting minutes? I would like to hear if there are any questions or if there's a motion then to go ahead and approve the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Arnie. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Ashley Leon Vasquez, I second.
Thank you, Ashley. All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none. Are there any abstained, excuse me? All right, hearing none, then we move to approve the minutes for February 23rd, 2022. Thank you all. So the minutes have been approved. Do we have any questions regarding that at this time? No? Okay. Agenda item 3, as we move forward, comments from the public on issues not related to this agenda item. If there's any comments from the public on the issues that are not on the agenda, you can please speak at this point. But since we don't have any public members, I'll move on to item number 4, which is the CCDA legislative sheet that was given out. I'll refer to Phil to give a status and an update on the legislative sheet one sheet, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Hessen. This will be an update. So as you can see on your screens, this is the Ledge 1-pager that we've presented at quite a few meetings. It's been through revision. Right now, it's currently in the purview of the Office of Legislative Affairs, and they are currently reviewing. So we're waiting to hear back from Office of Legislative Affairs on the legislative 1-pager before proceeding further with this. We will notify the legislative committee at the legislative committee meeting on the 1-page status during the subcommittee meeting, which I believe will be in 2 weeks. So if we've gotten further information at that point, then we will bring it to the legislative meeting. But that's all I have for that. So with that, I'd like to give that. Well, first of all, does anybody have any questions or comments on the Ledge 1-pager?
Has anyone had a chance to review it and had any comments regarding that?
No comments, no. It's everybody seems to be okay with the idea of moving this on, and we want to, like I said, we want to have Office of Legislative Affairs take a look at to make sure that they were okay with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely, yeah. So other than that, no, I don't have anything additional on that, and I hand it back to you, Commissioner.
All right, thank you. All right, well, moving on to agenda item number 5. I think we'll be finishing this meeting quite early.
Right.
The rate we're going. So this is Assembly Bill 2017 the state law and disability access. So we introduced CCDA data and research analyst Teresa Brown to present on Assembly Bill 2917.
Yes, thank you, Chair Commissioner Dr. El-Hassan. Just to give you a little bit of background, this bill is, first it would be important to discuss the existing laws that this, if this bill is passed.
Teresa?
Yes.
Hey, real quick before you go, I just want to do a quick disclaimer. I want to let everybody know on the call that the legislative bills that Teresa's about to speak of, which in particular are going to be Assembly Bill 2917 and Assembly Bill 2962, have not been passed. So, and statutory requirements have yet to be finalized. We're going to discuss optional measures to address these bills' potential requirements and how CCDA will ultimately satisfy them. But right now, they're still in the process. Nothing's been passed, so they are still in the legislative process. So I'll turn that back over to Teresa. She's going to now speak on both of those. I just want to give a quick disclaimer.
Okay, thank you. So does that mean that we have some room to actually provide input?
We speaking, you can provide
As a
input.
commission, yeah.
Yeah, we as a staff, CCDA no, but as a commissioner, any comments we note and we can forward if you need us to.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Teresa. Could go ahead and proceed.
Oh, thank you, Chair Commissioner El-Hassan. As I had mentioned, there is an existing law right now, Civil Code Section 55.32, that mandates that the California Commission on Disability Access is required to collect data from attorneys who file alleged physical access violations. We are required to collect the data from the complaints that they send to us, and we are also required to collect data on the case resolutions from those complaints. And we are also required from this Civil Code 55.32 to report no less than every 6 months on our internet website the type of the 10 most frequent alleged accessibility violations that are alleged in their complaints, their pre-litigation letters, as well as their case resolution reports. And then we were also required as a commission to develop and disseminate educational materials and information to promote the disability access compliance regulations. And we were also required, as well as a commission, to work with other state agencies, including the Division of State Architect and the Department of Rehabilitation, to develop educational materials and information for businesses to understand their obligations in providing disability access and helping them to facilitate compliance with construction-related accessibility standards. And last, we are also required to develop and make available on our website, and other governmental agencies that we work with, including ADA centers, toolkits, as well as other educational modules. And I bring this up to introduce a pending legislation, as Phil had indicated. It still has not been finalized. This is Assembly Bill 2917. What that bill indicates is that we would be required to receive information, or we would be required for attorneys to collect information from attorneys regarding inaccessibility of internet websites, similar to, and also report that to our annual report that we provide to the state legislature. This is similar to the existing laws that we are adhering to regarding Civil Code 55.32. So website violations would now be considered data that we would need to be required to collect if this bill does pass. And some of the provisions, again, similar is Civil Code 55.32, attorneys would be required to submit that data in the form of complaints that they file through the courts, as well as case resolution reports for alleged website violations. And we would be required as well to develop educational modules to help inform our stakeholders about their obligation and making their websites available through a checklist, through as well toolkits as well to provide information on circumventing the disability access barriers that are occurring with websites currently.
Does this include, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's a pretty vast, I mean, you're looking at only businesses, or are we looking at any inaccessible website? So that would include educational websites as well as business websites, or merchant websites. What are we looking at?
We're looking at websites related to a construction related violation.
Okay.
So so that would be in the context of currently our existing law for the websites involved with our top 10, which is parking. Well, now they're including, if this is passed, websites is also a website that we would need to collect data on for alleged accessibility violations. If this bill is passed, currently it's still pending.
Okay, so it's accessibility to a website related to only building construction?
When we worked on reporting what the data that we had found in 2020, what we were looking at is this is they considered a non-construction related violation of a website. Okay. For example, the website might be lacking large print. It may be lacking an indicator that that the website is providing an option of how the individual can access sign language interpreters. The screen caption options may be limited. Reasonable accommodation policies within the website are not offered. These were some of the things that we found in 2020 that were occurring as alleged violations for websites.
Thank you for the clarification.
Oh, no problem. And so currently, what we already have worked through is we are adhering to Civil Code 55.32, our portal enhancements, as far as providing our drop downs for the attorneys when they're submitting in their complaint, that they would be able to log in what type of alleged violations are occurring. And we have added website violations or alleged website violations with the anticipation that if this bill passes, the attorneys would also have that option to drop down or to select that alleged violation. And we would be able to collect the data if 2917 does pass. We currently have a quick reference guide that we are using to help attorneys adhere to the existing law of 55.32. And that quick reference guide does give the attorney information on how to submit a complaint and what have you. So if 2917, Assembly Bill 2917 passes, we would be able to add that also as a data point that the attorney would need to be responsible for providing to our legal portal when they send us their complaint or their case resolution report. We also in our portal have created a knowledge-based material. It's a link that the attorneys can click on to find out what their obligations are for the existing law of Civil Code 55.32. And if passed, Assembly Bill 2917, if it passes, we'd also be able to put in a link as well for information about 2917 and what their requirements are. So we have been developing preparations to address attorneys' questions that they may have. Additionally, within the education and outreach purview of potential partners and business stakeholders, we have been developing letters that we could use to approach the California State Bar, and they could use in their newsletter, not only to let them know about the attorney's obligations for Civil Code 55.32 when we are working with minimizing the barriers of adhering to the compliance of submitting the complaints and the case resolution reports. And so if 2917 is passed, we would also be able to develop another letter specifically to address that now another alleged violation would be, the attorneys would be responsible for reporting our website violations.
So, excuse me. So then, are these also, if they don't go to court, like for example, if a person files a complaint and it's resolved outside of the court system, the attorney still has to report because there's going to be some sort of settlement or resolution as a result of that complaint. Is that correct?
Yes, currently existing law would indicate that would fall under the purview of Civil Code 55.32 that does require a case resolution of a complaint that was initially filed in the courts as well, or a pre-litigation letter.
Yeah, so if it didn't go through the court system, they'd still have to report it.
So we would be looking at that data as well.
Right, okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome, Chair Commissioner Elhassan.
Okay, so are there any questions or comments in regards to this recent Assembly Bill 2917? And how it impacts access and getting information from attorneys? Okay, hearing none, then I'll move on. I know we don't have any public members, so I'm going to skip on down to.
Actually, hang on, Chair Commissioner Elhassan. We actually had some additions join in our meeting.
Okay,
We
great.
have, we have Emily Miller from the office of Senator Brian Jones. And then from public, we have Regina Dick Andrizzi. And then we have Alejandra Warner from the city of San Diego as well that joined us.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. So again, does anyone have any comments in regard to this latest legislation bill that Teresa had just gone over with us?
Chair Commissioner Elhassan, we do have a hand raised.
Okay.
From a public member,
Thank you.
Regina Dick Andrizzi. My apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name.
No, this is Regina Dick Andrizzi, and yes, you said it fine.
Okay.
I'm the former director of the Office of Small Business, and do want to highlight, been involved and worked with our e-learner quite a bit. And so I do think tracking now the lawsuits that are also one of the violation complaints is around websites. I do think it's an important item to track. I think, particularly with small businesses, we had seen in some late 2021 series of lawsuits, particularly targeted to bicycle shops that were using one particular e-commerce platform, and the platform, so it's a third-party platform, wasn't compliant. So it's looking at sort of larger policy components, beginning to track this, and if there's any correlation to third-party platforms that they in and of themselves are not compliant, might be information that can be gleaned, which then could develop into legislative matters or legislation and policy that requires these platforms to be accessible before they sell their product to small businesses.
That's an important point. Thank you for bringing it up. Any other questions or suggestions at this point? Before we move on to item number 6. Okay, thank you again. So hearing none, let's move on to accessible parking campaign. So far, I think Abigail has an update in regards to our campaign and what we've been up to.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Commissioner El-Hassan. So a little update on the accessible parking campaign. The CCDA's accessible parking campaign has been making great strides in the development and progression of their toolkits. For a little background on the accessible parking campaign, the accessible parking campaign is a part of the CCDA's strategic goal for 2022 through 2023. The accessible parking campaign is a response to the CCDA's top 10 alleged ADA construction-related violations, and we'll have a further conversation and discussion on what is the CCDA's top 10 alleged ADA construction-related violations and what goes into that from our data analyst, Teresa Brown. Back onto the accessible parking campaign. The focus of the accessible parking campaign is to formulate and to establish toolkits that will eventually be distributed to stakeholders and businesses across California. The business industries include small businesses, so those who actually interact with the topic every day, the construction industry, those who actually develop the business sites at their very inception. So with this in mind, the checklist committee devised work groups to develop and to compose the toolkits. The work groups consist of ADA coordinators that work with local governments, business owners and operators, as well as the construction industry. Within these referred sectors, they would be able to have the opportunity to utilize the documents that the CCDA checklist committee has created and utilize on accessible parking. So within this, the checklist committee will create guidelines on accessible parking, and then these guidelines will make up the toolkits. The toolkits for each group will be distributed around the end of 2023. However, recently, the accessible parking campaign work groups have been working on different outreach to different city localities and businesses to inquire on adding additional members to our work groups, so the toolkits can accurately represent each group's needs. In turn, the accessible parking campaign has been able to add new additional members, and our meetings have become a lot more fruitful, and the discussion has been flowing very effortlessly. So currently in the work group meetings, they are discussing which topics should be discussed in the toolkits, and then these topics will in turn make up the subheadings that make up the toolkits. These are topics such as justifications, definitions, the CCDA's top 10 violations, CAS definition and benefits as well, responsibilities, legal liability. So the reason why I'm bringing up the accessible parking campaign to y'all today is once the toolkit is developed, we're going to have to distribute this toolkit and be able to have the toolkit targeted at the correct audiences that will be able to utilize it. So this is pretty much a discussion starter on what we can start to think so we can stay on track with our strategic goal and be able to meet our deadlines efficiently. And then eventually this toolkit will be placed onto the CCDA website. So if there are any suggestions on how y'all would like to see that as either an interactive module, a regular posting, we're open to any ideas. And then with that, I will pass it back to Chair Commissioner El-Hassan.
I have a quick question about the modality of how we might have it listed on our CCDA website.
Yeah.
When you say interactive, what would that entail?
So currently we have a construction checklist that I believe was developed in 2020.
Right.
And there is an interactive form where you can go onto the website and you can fill out the form, and then you can print out your form. whenever it has been developed with all your little indications in it. So you have it as twofold. You have internet access and you can also have a hard copy of it. So that's pretty much the interactive module we were thinking of going.
Okay, because I was thinking like question answer
Oh, okay.
type where a person would say, you know, how many accessible parking spaces do I need to have? And how does the parking spaces someone at our last meeting brought up a really good point about how a lot of the charging stations are taking up a lot of accessible parking spaces. And so I'm not sure how that's being really worked out at the state level, and where are those stations then supposed to be relocated in order to have more accessible spots for people with disabilities.
Exactly, great point. Actually, within the groups, they are talking about electronic charging stations and how that interacts with the construction industry as well with business owners and operators, and how we can address making them aware of those accessibility standards. So that is on the forefront of the toolkit.
Because if they don't have a disabled placard or a reason to take a spot, they should probably be moved to a different location where those accessible spots in front of any business or entertainment, for example, even movie theaters, have those accessible spots for people with disabilities.
In the meeting, sorry, this is Phil and Paul. I was in the meetings they have been that, like Abby said, that has been a lot of the conversation has been around the electric, the charging stations. And also, you know, with the COVID and the parking challenges that have been with the, you know, with also having the parking lot setups where restaurants parking lot setups, there have been some the challenges that's being discussed in the group. So the points that you're bringing up are being discussed, and you know whether they need to be in the checklist, and if they do, how they're going to implement them. So it's been some spirited, as Abby pointed out. The last few conversations have been very spirited, a lot of input, and the good thing about the group is there's been such a good dichotomy of people that have been there that it's, you know, we're getting opinions from a lot of different perspectives, and there have been some aha moments in there. So it is a productive project. Abby's doing a great job of spearheading that, and it's working out fabulous. So we really are happy with the input that we're getting from our participants.
That's great. What is CAF's role? Are they setting out in regards to working with legislators as far as designating how that's going to be handled?
As far as,
on that?
You're talking about as far as in the meetings?
Yes.
Yeah, the CAFs, they've been there. I mean, really, they've been giving their opinion. They've just been kind of giving their opinion from the point of view of you need to think about this, because I'll just point out some in the construction meeting, we have a lot of, people who are in the construction industry who are, familiar with parking lots and how they're set up.
Right.
But, also having that person, the CAFs, come in and say, okay, we also need to keep in mind, the slope, and, they're giving that. So their role, I mean, everybody's there basically to advise, to give their point of view from their industry, what you need to be aware of when creating these checklists. So the CAFs, I don't know if they necessarily are, I think they're just more there to give, you need to be looking at, you need to also consider these things when you're putting together these parking lots. We showed up with a mock-up of a checklist, and some of the pictures on there weren't correct, and they had a field day with us about, pointing out why the parking lots weren't accessible. So, and that's great. We need that feedback, and we need to hear that, because when we want to create a guide that's good and it's relative and it's accurate, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. We put this together, so that we do need input from various sources.
No, that's really, and I guess I should be attending some of those meetings, since we're going to be responsible for the dissemination of that information.
We can give you the meeting information if you like, and offline I can send you that information.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Will do.
Because that's one of the last bullet points here. Once the toolkits are developed and ready for, they will be placed on the CCDA website. but also there's going to be other modalities where we can actually have it available through chambers of commerce, also the Bar Association for people who are working on litigation around that area. I think that's all important too, as far as thinking of population and groups to disseminate the information too.
Absolutely. And I'm going to apologize because my eyes are horrible, but I know sometime next year, we're going to really get more into that portion. Right now, they're designing the toolkit, but once they get into the distribution, I mean, I'm going to invite you now, but once they actually get into we're talking about distributing that will be very helpful to really understand who we need to be targeting with this and how we can do it. So yeah, that's our purpose of bringing it to this meeting today. Absolutely.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And thank you for your hard work on this, Abby. Also, I want to, any other questions from our commissioners or public on this agenda item? Any hands raised? Staff? None? Okay.
Looks like there's none.
Thank you so much. All right, moving on to agenda item number 7 regarding the Assembly Bill 2962 on Committee of Judiciary Accessibility, Disability Access, Construction Related Accessibility Claims. That's a mouthful. Okay, so we have our legislative analyst, Abigail, to present on Assembly Bill 2962.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Elhassan. I appreciate it. So we're going to get started on Assembly Bill 2962. So first, the location of.
Oops, we lost the audio.
There we go. We good now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I apologize for that. So right now, the bill is currently in the Assembly being reread at the Committee of Appropriations, and it's actually is on the calendar for today to be reread. So I would like to reiterate the legal disclaimer that Phil touched on before, that currently this bill is going through the legislative process and it's not signed into law yet. The CCDA understands that the legislative bills have not been passed and statutory requirements have yet to be finalized. We would like to discuss the optional measures to address these bills' potential requirements and how CCDA will optimally satisfy them. So now back to the bill. The bill is based on CCDA's reports to the legislature. So these reports are in accordance with the Civil Code section 55.32 that Teresa touched on earlier. So Civil Code section 55.32 requires the commission to compile specific data and to submit a report to the legislature based on the top 10 alleged ADA construction related violations. And as I mentioned previously, we're going to have Teresa Brown speak on this a little bit more momentarily to give a little bit more in-depth description and details on what is the CCDA's top 10 alleged ADA construction related violations and what goes into those. So with this in mind, with the top 10, there are consistently violations in parking lots and exterior paths of travel are constantly in the CCDA's top 10. It's important to note that this does not represent all of California, but only the data from attorneys who are compliant with that Civil Code section 55.32 and are sending copies of those alleged ADA construction related complaints and case resolution for data analysts. In response to the CCDA reports, Assembly Bill 2962 would mandate CCDA to post on the CCDA website additional resources and links. But however, with respect to the top 10 that I mentioned before, the CCDA would have to develop toolkits or educational modules that focus on construction-related accessibility violations in parking lots and exterior paths of travel. As I mentioned previously in the prior agenda item, that CCDA's accessible parking campaign is currently working on developing a toolkit of just that very issue, construction-related accessibility violations in parking lots and exterior paths of travel. Subsequently, if this bill is passed, this portion is already covered. Additionally, the legislation specifies the inclusion of a checklist for businesses to recognize the most common construction-related violations that are in the CCDA's top 10. This is not a checklist that owners could use to self-determine if they're ADA compliant. Rather, it'd be a type of listing that a business can post outside their entrance as an educational tool. In order to develop this listing, CCDA already has the research and data to utilize to create the handout. So if the bill is passed, we would have to develop the handout for businesses to post and then figure out outreach options and methods of distribution in order to get the listing out to the correct audience. Now back to CCDA's top 10, I'm going to refer to our data and research analyst, Teresa Brown, to give us our rundown on what is the CCDA's top 10.
Thank you, Abigail. As you remember, in 2020's annual report, we indicated that the top 10 alleged construction-related violations primarily pertain to parking and path of travel exterior. As you can see from the 2021 annual report, this appeared in Appendix B, parking was ranked as #1, in particular existing spaces that were non-compliant. It was also ranked as #3 pertaining to van accessibility and loading zones that were non-compliant or non-existent. It appeared in the rank of #6 as well, pertaining to designated accessible directional and parking signage, missing or non-compliant, as well as ranking in the #9th place of insufficient number of designated accessible spaces. Also in the 2020 annual report, we indicated that path of travel exterior was a primary category of alleged violations. In particular, path of travel ranked #4, pertaining to vertical transitions, ramps, stairs, landings being non-compliant. We also found that on the #5 rank was routes to and from parking lots, right-of-ways were not accessible, there were non-compliant surfaces, and we also found that path of travel exterior ranked #8 in the 2020 annual report for obstacles in the accessible pathway that created an accessible barrier. As we are finalizing our 2021 annual report, and as I had mentioned as one of our requirements for the existing law of Civil Code 55.32, we are required on our website to post every 6 months the top 10 alleged violations. As we are finalizing the top 10 in the 2021 annual report, I can report on what we saw from July 2021 through December of 2021 for the top 10 alleged violations. Again, you see that parking as well as path of travel exterior are the primary alleged violations. Here we see parking as #2, and pertaining specifically to existing spaces or non-compliant. You see that parking is also ranked as #6 for, van accessibility being non-compliant, or loading zones being non-existent or inaccessible to individuals with disabilities, as well as ranking #8 for designated accessible directional parking signage is non-compliant, as well as ranking in the #10 spot for insufficient number of designated accessible spaces. And again, similar to 2020 and 2021, we saw that path of travel exterior was a major alleged violation. Particularly, it ranked #3 for, again, vertical transitions, which included ramps and stairs not being compliant, or excessive slopes or cross slopes occurring in the vertical transitions. We saw it also ranked #4 as obstacles were in the accessible path of travel, and it created an accessible barrier. We saw something new be entered as a path of travel exterior, was a focus on doors that were not accessible, including thresholds, handles, pulls, latches, clearances being non-compliant. And then again, we were back to path of travel exterior for a ranking of number 7 for the routes to and from the parking lot that were not accessible. And ultimately, if Assembly Bill 2962 is codified, we are required, as Abby had mentioned, for an inclusion of a checklist for the businesses to recognize the most common construction-related violations that are in the top 10 to be developed. And again, as Abby had mentioned, this is not a checklist to owners so that they can self-determine. It is meant to represent a listing for businesses to post as an educational tool outside of their entrances. And nonetheless, CCDA will be, we're already compiling our data based off of our existing law of 55.32 regarding these alleged violations that are occurring. Chair Commissioner Elhassan, I'd like to pass this back to you. Would you do you have any questions about what I've shown you in 2020 as well as pending for 2021 once our annual report is finalized and available for review?
Well, I was interested because the terminology between path of travel, exterior, it's like 3 separate places.
Right.
So I'm just looking at it and it,
so what
I'm just thinking out loud. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of processing it in my head, how that information can be more, I know they're separate entities, but the way it's presented, it seems like it's the same. Does that make sense?
You brought up a good point, and currently we are working in our portal to increase the enhancements of giving specific explanations for parking and for path of travel exterior. For example, path of travel exterior, in one scenario, it's referring specifically to the routes of travel from the parking lot to the right of way. So the attorney would have the option to understand that that's an option to select when they're reporting on the complaint's alleged violation. And then in another scenario, maybe path of travel exterior, the complaint only reference alleged door barriers. And so the attorney now, as we're working with our developing team with the portal, they will understand with additional explanations in our quick reference guide, as well as in our drop-down descriptions, specifically what we are looking to track within that category. So you brought up a good point of that, even though it is one category, there may be confusion as to what's specifically pertaining to that category we are collecting data from.
Right. And so that's one thing I was looking at and seeing, just turning in my head. As a person with a disability who uses accessible parking with my van and the obstacles I've come across. So like the path of travel interior is not accessible, not compliant. So the word interior.
So what we were doing is tracking getting to the business, so the exterior from the parking lot, but then once the individual would walk inside the business, they may encounter again additional obstacles as well, of maybe ramps inside the building, not being able to, not pertaining to, or not being compliant with ADA requirements, etc. So we are tracking data from the outside of the business leading up into the business, and then inside the business barriers that are providing issues for individual with a disability.
That wasn't too clear right there to me. Okay. After you explained it, I understood what you meant inside the building.
Yes, thank you. You did bring up a good point, and we are currently on our portal making that more clear or clarified for the attorneys, as they may have that same question that you're having in their while they're submitting their complaints.
Right. So I think it's an excellent tool to use for our attorneys. I think more clarification, as you identified and as we talked about in this meeting, I think are important to note. And it's a work in progress. Nothing is stamped as final. So I think as we continue to evolve and issues come up, we'll be able to clarify much more how the designation of the different violations can be clarified and more directive to the problem. Yeah.
I think that would be helpful information as we develop our checklists
Right.
and our toolkits.
Okay. Any other questions from our members?
Chair Commissioner Alhassan, we do have a hand raised from a member of the public,
Okay,
Charlene Ornelas.
thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, I have three things. One, in the number 1, where it's talking about the surface heights, I think it should be to include overhangs and surface heights, getting to counters and stuff, because many times umbrellas are around that need to be higher because people who are blind are getting poked with them. There are other overhangs to worry about, which is like awnings that people don't think about. So overhangs are also a issue. And as far as path of travel, if you divide it into 2 areas, from parking lot to front door and from public transit to front door, a lot of people forget that it needs to go from public transit to the entrance. And they may only go from the street to the entrance, but getting from public transit to that point may not be possible. So they really, and ADA says it, to have the external public access from transit to the door. Thank you.
That's number 7 is what you're referring to, Charlene, right? Routes to and from the parking lot, public right of way.
Yes,
right?
it isn't clear in yours exactly
Uh-huh.
which is which, and I'm saying to make it more clear, if you would, if we did public right from parking lot to front door or to entrance, and then from transit to entrance, it would make it clear as to what they're looking at. Because a lot of times the area from public transit to a door entry is not looked at from the whole distance, and it should be.
I see. No, you're right. Absolutely. Did you note that, Teresa, about the?
Yes, I have a notation for that. Thank you for that comment. That's very helpful information.
Right. Thank you so much. Any other suggestions or comments regarding this top 10 allegations of related disability access?
Chair Commissioner Alhassan, I do not see any indication in the chat room, as well as hands raised from the participants in the meeting.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Hearing none, then we'll move on to agenda item 8. And thank you again, staff, for the excellent work and presentation as we move forward. So item 8 has to do with a disability access and education revolving fund. And this is something that I know I personally have been trying to talk to our local city about providing that information so that it would be more accessible to businesses and our chambers too. So Phil, do you have any more information on presenting in regards to our outreach to cities?
I do. So we did conduct over the last few weeks, we conducted a handful of meetings with some of the cities throughout California, mainly with their public works and accounting departments.
Mhm.
And one of the common themes we discovered was they're not really aware of the vital function of the fund.
Mhm.
They were aware of like the administrative fees, so 5% of the funds that have been allotted are fees for administrative fees, and many of them were doing that. However, the cities were not utilizing the allocation of money for the fund, CAS certification and training and retention, which is the purpose of the fund. That's the main purpose of the fund. It's its highest priority. There are some other things we can do, but the highest priority of the fund is CAS certification and training and retention. So, solution from CCDA. We are creating, one thing we're working on right now is a quick reference guide. So the quick reference guide is used to emphasize the fund's highest priority is really to give you a snapshot of what a quick reference so you can go through and you can understand the Disability Access and Education Revolving Fund, the main purpose of the fund, what it's to be used for. And also outlining the CAS certification and training retention being the highest priority. And what it is meant to be also, that quick reference guide is basically a foot into actual, if you want to get into deeper discussion about the Disability Access and Education Revolving Fund. And what that's going to encompass is a couple of different things. Well, one thing we've talked about is I call it a brown bag lunch, or what we were thinking about doing is a lunchtime training where people, I keep saying live via satellite, but I know we don't do that anymore. So live via Zoom, you can come in at lunch, sit down with CCDA. We will give you an outline of what the Disability Access and Education Revolving Fund is. And not only that, it's your opportunity to ask questions a little bit deeper dive. So the quick reference guide will be kind of your entry level to the program, but we will also provide a deeper training that we're looking to do. The other thing the other aspect we're interested in doing would be more like a road show where CCDA would take the show to you. This is where we would want to work with some of the maybe some of the chambers, local businesses to set up. Maybe they can schedule us in certain areas where we can come and actually do what we call the road show, where we bring the information to you. We'll have handouts. We'll be there to answer questions. But really, it's a way to sit down in a room with folks and have an actual conversation about the fund and what it's for, and really answer questions for the cities to see how they are, to make them understand how they can best utilize these funds and the purpose of the fund. So in a nutshell, that's some of the things that we've been talking about over the past few weeks. And I know that you were just going into, you had done some work locally there, Commissioner Hassan. And so yeah, that's just a kind of a brief synopsis of what we're looking at for that fund going forward in the next year or so.
So I just have a quick question. How many cities do you have accessed it?
We have access, I'm sorry.
Yeah, who have actually utilized the Disability Education Revolving Fund?
That's something we're still actually trying to get an exact number of how many people are actually using it. Quite a few. What we're coming across is the cities are utilizing the funds, but they just don't know what they're for. They're not really aware of the program, kind of what it's for. They know that this money's coming in and they're not sure what to do with it. So we're really, we are trying to ascertain that number. We are working with Division of State Architect PSA to make sure that we get as much of the reporting information as we can in order to determine that. And we are still kind of sifting through that information. There's a lot of information, so we're sifting through that. We don't have a dedicated analyst to that right now. It's something Abby and I have been working on. We had Adam's moved on to another position, so we don't really have a dedicated analyst to this right now. However, Abby and I are going to continue the process. We're kind of getting into the information, sifting through it. We will be able to, probably by the next education outreach meeting, we'll be able to give you some more concrete numbers, but hopefully at that time, we'd like to be moving forward with the, definitely with a quick reference guide, but additionally maybe doing some trainings to get people on board.
So when the money comes down, and you might not know this, but maybe we need to find out. So it comes down from the state and it's distributed to the cities.
It's a fee. So business license fee. It's a $4 fee that's attached on to a business license application. So when you apply, it's a $4 fee, and that fee goes directly to the city. Well, I'm sorry, I take that back. It goes to the Department Division of State Architect.
Right.
And they disseminate the money accordingly.
To the different cities.
The different cities, correct.
Depending on the funds that they received from that $4.
Absolutely, yes.
I see. Okay. So, but they're not defining it as Disability Access Education Revolving Fund.
It's defined that way currently.
It is?
It is. And you know what, I don't know what the line item shows when they actually That I don't know. I'll have to get that information for you. I don't know what the actual line, it is called the Disability Access and Education Revolving Fund, but I don't know what line item they're seeing when they, what
Yeah, curious.
some of the cities are getting, they're getting different. It's not listed the same with each city.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so those are the things that we need to sift through. So when we're doing these trainings, when we're doing this outreach, we can answer these questions effectively. And we want people to, I mean, obviously the object of this is to get them to know, okay, we do have these funds and this is what we can use them for. And that's really the purpose of our work here at CCDA, is to really get that information out in the most effective way. So we're bringing it to our committee to, possibly discuss that, especially as we get closer to the implementation portion of this. What's the best way to implement this information to get it out there to the masses?
Well, I think it's how it's disseminated. That's why I was asking the question. And so if information is specifically being designated, like the line item, like you were saying, you're not sure how it's actually says Disability Access Education Revolving Fund, that might trigger a question for them. Where can we get, the education in regards to this fund? Or
agreed. And that's what we're going to deep dive. That's what we're deep diving right now. And we will, very soon have some training to put together, and also, like I said, a quick reference guide to really get people, the nuts and bolts of the program, and then we'll be able to answer things at a deeper level very soon.
Okay, that sounds good. Are there any comments or suggestions from our members at this time?
Chair Commissioner Alhassan, we do have a public member that has their hand raised, Ms. Regina Dick-Andresi.
Thank you. Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. So just want to share a little bit about our experience with with San Francisco's experience with the Disability Access and Revolving Loan Fund. The funds are collected through the business registration in San Francisco, and the city retains the portion, and I think, what is it, whatever percentage it is right now that's supposed to stay at the local municipality, retains that portion, and then the other percentage is sent to the state architect. And I know that $4 is about to expire, I think, in 2023. Don't remember the exact date. So just I'm putting that out there, that may be something that I think San Francisco is interested in either seeing continued. Over the years, San Francisco has utilized some of that funding to help businesses get CASP inspections. The city currently has the Accessible Business Entrance Program, and so is developing grant programs that are assisting businesses that are being required by their property owners to meet the obligations for the Accessible Business Entrance Program. And we're in discussion later in the summer to develop a new grant that might help them, utilizing these funds, help them pay for doing the remediations. So just wanted to let you know that those are some of the ways that the funds have been used. And we do coordinate with our Department of Public Works, Department of Building Inspection, the Mayor's Office on Disability, the Mayor's Office on Housing, and any other agency that does want to either have staff become CAS certified or pay for recertification. Those funds are used for that as well. But many of the departments right now are able to pay for the certification and recertification, except for the Mayor's Office on Disability has been the only agency in the last couple of years that have utilized those funds to either become certified CASP inspectors or certified in CASP or recertification. So Phil, happy to kind of, share with you and work with you as you're doing outreach and on some of the work that we've been doing here in San Francisco.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I'd love to speak with you offline about that. To answer your question, yeah, you do get 90% of that, and it's 10% goes to DSA. So thank you for bringing that up. And also to your point of the legislation, there is actually, and I'm going to put my disclaimer out, this isn't current. Again, as Abby and I and Teresa have all told you, this is all stuff that's going through right now. It's not necessarily, it's nothing that's been passed, but they're currently looking at keeping that $4 fee beyond the sunset of December. I believe it's December of 2023. So we are hoping that will, there is legislation to hopefully move that, continue that $4 fee. And so that's, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I apologize. And I do, from my experience and from the, sorry, my camera left, from my experience and the amount of funding that's coming in, I think, and this may be something, Phil, to sort of try to get from the state architect as to how much money is being retained at the local level. While I think San Francisco's been trying to do a really good concerted effort, but I do know that, even as a city which has its own Office of Small Businesses to support businesses and to help them navigate. And, we've worked with Arnie for what, decades now. I think, I mean, I don't want to speak for the city, but I think for you and the California Commission on Disability Access and kind of the charge that you have for being the support for local municipalities around education and developing tools that maybe a relook at where these funds, the allocation of some of this funding goes, because I do think the work that you're doing provides a tremendous amount of support to the local level. So that may be something concurrently is taken a look at. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And that is, that's our hope. And that's what we are. And I appreciate, like you said, the feedback. It seems like a lot of larger cities, San Francisco, some of the larger cities that we've talked to, that we've spoken with, do have a better grasp of what the funds are for, what they can be used for, and are implementing them in the correct way. We just want to try and get all of California on the same page. And, we have the big, large cities, we have a kind of the middle, medium-sized cities, and we have some of the really small cities, and we're trying to make sure that all of them at each level know kind of what their possibility is, because some have bigger pots than others. So, we really want to get that information out there, but I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I'd love to talk with you offline if possible.
Yeah, I don't see a raised hand, but I wanted to comment. One of the big problems we have in San Francisco is getting property owners to actually take notice of it. This accessible business entrance program that we've had for about 5 years, almost 50% of all the property owners have failed to even think about this ordinance. So the big problem is not necessarily the serial litigants, but it's the people, the property owners, just not paying attention to these lawsuits. It's a big problem. And only 50% over about 5 or 6 years have actually taken note.
That's good information. Thank you. You said less than 50%?
Around 50%.
About 50%. Okay.
I have a quick question in regards to funds being, how long, I guess, is there an expiration date? Are the funds, if not used within a specific time frame, what happens at that point? Or is there one?
The funds no, they remain. You don't lose access to them or anything. It's we just need to have people understand that, with this spot, we don't want people to use them for the wrong things, and we want people to understand that it is there, and this is kind of what you can use it for.
Right. Okay.
There are some very helpful things, and just like we just heard there, San Francisco's doing quite a bit to really utilize the funds correctly, and we want to, get that message out to everyone. But to your question, no, they don't leave. They're there for as long as they've been allocated.
Okay, well, it's good to know, but it's also then they could have a pretty good sum in regards to
Right,
to be used for those cities who might not even know about that. I
right,
guess that's what I'm saying.
right, absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback from our members. Do we have any other comments or suggestions on agenda?
Chair Commissioner Elhassan, I don't see any hands raised or indication in the chat of public members that would like to comment, or the commissioners.
Okay. And I did note some of the questions that were asked, so I appreciate that. And I think our staff too has made notes of that too. So thank you. As we move forward in this area, as far as education and outreach to our cities. All right, agenda item number 9, CCDA newsletter. So for discussion on this, we have Analyst Presley Strother.
Hi, how's it going? Thank you for having me and passing it on, Chair Commissioner Dr. Elhassan. So I wanted to get started with letting everyone know that we're planning to revive the CCDA newsletter, and we want to bring it back this July for a summer issue. We plan to release it on a quarterly basis, about every 3 months, kind of going with the seasons. So summer, we'll have July, a fall, we'll have October. Winter, we're going to aim for the end of January, and then we'll have our spring issue in April. The newsletter will be distributed via email and also posted on our CCDA's website. On a side note, we are going to do some changes on the website. One of the ones that we're currently working on is reviewing and revising all the biographies of our commissioners. So I will be contacting the commissioners in the coming weeks with the updated versions of the biographies. And if there's anything that any of the commissioners want to add or update anything, we will get that on our website so it's nice and current. On to our newsletter. This is our past issue, that our actual first official issue that was made last July. And the very first topic that we have is the message from the chair. So what we want to do is we plan on keeping this. Chris Downey was the inception of our newsletter. And so we're thinking for the next commissioner, we can use our vice chair commissioner, Doug Wheely, and then continuing from there, we'll have a rotational basis. So each commissioner will have the opportunity to be spotlighted. So after this, the vice chair spotlight in our next newsletter, we will do the immediate past chair, Commissioner Guy Lemus. And then after that, we'll have each subcommittee chair spotlighted in the section. If there's any updates to their committee, we can also put that in with their message. And so eventually we will get through all the commissioners and always have messages from our commissioners on what's going on at the CCDA. Moving on to the next section of our newsletter, we have the new employee spotlight was on this, but what we're planning to do for our next newsletter is actually highlighting a tribute to our past executive director, Angela Jamont. So we'll intend to keep this section and we'll be able to spotlight different significant events, new CCDA members, commissioners, or even farewells of past CCDA members and commissioners as well. Under that, we have our announcements. So this will be any new announcements that we have coming for our summer issue. We'll provide continuous updates on CCDA projects, developments with the legal portal, for instance, FAQs, and then what Phil had talked about with like virtual in-person informational sessions. We can put that on announcements just so people can stay updated with that. Going on to the next section, we have the 2021 strategic goals. So we're going to update that for our 2022 goals, which will include our accessible parking campaign, along with that, our data migration that we are currently doing with our portal that is taking all of the complaints and resolutions from 2012 to 2020. So we're keeping that as our goals, and we're going to keep everyone updated with that. On to the next section that we have for our newsletter. It is the myth or misconception, which is one of our toolkits that we had created. So this one that we have in this newsletter has to do with the very first myth or misconception. So I we've thought about it. We'll just do our number 2 and be able to, on every newsletter, go through each myth or misconception and make it in our newsletter as well as accessible online. Under that, we will have, so this is the number 1 construction related access from the previous year. So for this next one, we're thinking that we will put the number 1 rating of the complaint or alleged construction complaints for July 2021 to December 2021, which is the access to goods, support, services, and equipment. It had the highest percent rated of 21%. So we can kind of go into more detail of the surface heights and space requirements for counters, tables, bars, or seatings that aren't compliant. Because as we saw, there's, 4 revolving around parking, 4 revolving around path of travel and exterior, and then 1 of path of travel interior. But how we had talked about in the top 10, I feel like this might be a place where we can kind of expand on what that means. Moving on to the next one is kind of how businesses are able to, oh, sorry, could you go back real quick? There we go. Very bottom, the let's get access to compliant. It's gonna give business owners the access of learning about the violation. So this next future violation will have links to small businesses to help on what ways they can get compliant. All right, now on to the next section. This one is the access tips for outdoor operations. So that was what we had made last year. What we're planning to do this year is just applying one of the current information that we have, possibly the development of accessible parking campaign toolkits, or even, switching it up depending on what kind of toolkits we have available at the time. And then in our last section, we have commission highlights. So what we're thinking of the next article to have is we have one article that USC wrote about Commissioner Ida Claire, first female state architect that was appointed, and she was also the first technical administrator of the CAST system. So we're going to make an article on that, or we're going to show the article on that and also highlight it in our commission. We also have the Rex Hine tribute video that we want to highlight for our commission. So we're going to put that in there as well. And last but not least, we also want to show appreciation to Commissioner Paravanya as being the interterm executive director. So we're going to throw in that as highlights as well. So that's a little brief discussion on what we want to do for our future newsletters, and I will pass it back to you if anyone has any questions.
I have a comment real quick. Sorry, Commissioner Hudson. I just want to interject. I wanted, and this is my fault, and I apologize. I'm so rude. I wanted to introduce you all. I don't think I even officially introduced Abby, but Abigail Ridge and Presley Strother are new to CCDA. Both of them just started. Abby started, I believe, in March. Correct me if I'm wrong, Abby. And Presley started in the end of April. So Presley hasn't even been here a month. So both of them worked super hard. We're very fortunate to have them here. So I want to apologize because it was my fault for not introducing them ahead of time. I should have. So everybody welcome Abby and Presley to the team. They're outstanding members, and we're happy to have them.
Thank you, Presley. You did a great job on this presentation about the CCDA newsletter. I do see that as we're moving forward, there'll be information that we can add that we're going to be talking about, whether the development of a new app or our PSA that we're planning on moving forward with on YouTube. So those are some additional things that I think are good to highlight as far as education and outreach area for us. Any other comments from our commissioners or public regarding our CCDA newsletter?
Chair Commissioner Elhassan, I do not see any indication in our chat, as well as any hands raised from members of the public or other commissioners.
Well, I think this is really exciting. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Teresa.
Oh, no worries. No, there's no indication of individuals that would like to speak.
Thank you for that. As we're moving forward, I think this is another great tool for reaching out and communicating. I think it'd be great to highlight the newsletter and possibly even send it out to local businesses as we're reaching out for those who don't access maybe our website regularly, so that at least they can sign up for the newsletter, or maybe we can have access on our site where they can sign, put in their email or sign in to receive our, like most businesses are doing right now. So just an idea as we're moving forward. But thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you for your input. Nice meeting you.
Very nice meeting you. I look forward to working with you as we move forward.
Yes, same.
Okay, so given that we have no other further comments or suggestions, I'd like to move on to agenda item number 10, which is future agenda items. Does anyone have any future agenda items that they'd like to address, or maybe have more information on, given what we've talked about today?
Chair Commissioner Elhassan, I do not see an indication in the chat or any hands raised.
Well, I don't have the hand to raise, but
Okay.
Person that talked about umbrellas and the blind being poked with them, kind of just is talking about protruding objects, and a protruding object that is not construction related, but you see often are who manages trees where the branches are too low and you get hit in the head with those things. And it's something you never see on lists, but if you walk down the street, you can see that. And I just thought I'd bring that up.
Thank you. That is a good point. I'm in a scooter, so I'm too low to experience that, but that's very important to identify. Any other comments or suggestions?
Chair Commissioner Elhassan, I do not see any indication in the chat, as well as any hands raised for wanting to speak.
Okay, then at this time I will adjourn item number 11. I'll adjourn our meeting at 2:54 p.m. All those in favor? Or I need a motion, I'm sorry. Can I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
I so move.
Second?
Commissioner Leon Vasquez, I second.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? All right, hearing none. Thank you all for attending and participating on our Educational Outreach Committee meeting. I appreciate all your comments and feedback. I like to also extend my sincere appreciation to staff for their support and guidance as we're moving forward at this time. So thank you again. And our next meeting is going to be, staff, can you help me? I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Yeah, I can handle that portion for you if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. The next education outreach meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, August 24th, 2022, from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. And then the next subcommittee meeting is designated for our legislative committee meeting, which will be held on Wednesday, June 18th, 2022, from 1:30 to 3 p.m. And it will be held here at the California Commission on Disability Access headquarters in Sacramento at 400 R Street, Suite 312.
Okay, so our next Education Outreach Committee will be Wednesday, August 24th at 1:30 p.m. August 24th.
Yeah, but
Did I say
June.
August 4th, I'm sorry. I wrote 24th.
It's a Saturday. June 18th is a Saturday.
I misspoke, my bad. It's supposed to be June 8th. I apologize.
No problem.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. All right, everyone, have a great afternoon. And we'll see you at our next meeting. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair
Bye.
Commissioner Elhassan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.